Welcome to a series of brief but deep philosophical reflection. My name is Joseph, and I am simply trying to provide critical yet objective commentary on philosophy in order to carefully direct any and all along the path of right reason. This series, entitled Building a Proper Disposition, is dedicated to building a proper philosophical disposition in order to better tackle our abundant philosophical, theological, ethical, and practical dilemmas. What is my fundamental presupposition? That every person attests to his or her own personal beliefs out of some subjectively reasonable circumstance. Thus, I am aiming to illuminate the extent to which our subjective thinking may have become pure bias or even pure error. Remember, there can only be one truth, and this is out of philosophical necessity. All the world's a stage, and all the men and women merely players. They have their exits and their entrances. Shakespeare. Building a proper disposition. Presentation 2. Establishing worldview. In the first presentation, we demonstrated how an objective reality must exist out of philosophical necessity based on the causal relationship between humanity and reality itself. This serves as a foundation on which all proceeding subjective analysis, interpretation, and experience can be honestly and critically scrutinized. It is a pragmatic approach to turning grand philosophical inquiry into something tangible. It is typical to create composite metaphysical narratives that can then be transposed to a physical or temporal application. In other words, we begin with philosophical necessity in order to more readily trek through practical necessity, which will be this presentation's topic: how to establish a worldview. Thus, to where shall we venture? The metropolitan capitals of our interconnected world? The desolate deserts of Africa? The polar ice caps? Or the teeming jungles? Do we want to focus on the culture and the people, or the scenery and the landscape? Should we stay in hotels, or maybe camp in the wilderness? As you can see, establishing a worldview is as complex as the amount of information you receive via knowledge and experience. The world is a large place, a singular place, but full of endless amounts of singularities. A sad realization is that a majority of us live and die without even having borne witness to the smallest fraction of it. Even when we take our vacations and trips abroad, or travel throughout our own countries and discover our own histories, how much of the whole are we really scratching at? We are like dust mingling with dust, but slowly what accumulates are the memories and times spent in places, with people, doing all sorts of adventurous or peaceful activities. Let us reflect on the roving journeyman, one who travails space relative to time. Walking across a country would yield both quantitative as well as qualitative experiences, probably much more than driving or flying. Wouldn't you agree? What kind of proportional relationship can be drawn from this type of comparison? For example, if I were to take a bus from Canada to Chile, the sheer number of encounters I would have would be much more than the same trek of space covered by a plane. Now, granted, the plane would be much faster, but consider the occasion of traveling from Canada to Chile as a single goal. The means by which we complete this goal directly result in the experiences and potential memories encountered and remembered along the way. Is this a practical assessment of our eagerness to build a worldview? Let us consider the ambitious entrepreneur who wants to expand his or her chain of restaurants into other districts or even other countries. Is it responsible to haphazardly establish new restaurants in areas unknown or unvisited? At some point, specific information is necessary in order to make practical decisions, even if the information is in areas we may have never even heard of before. Alas, This is analogous to the arena in which we shape our worldview. We are the wayward journeymen, just as much as the ambitious entrepreneurs, who not only travail life from conception to death, but also want to gather helpful information along the way so that we can make informed decisions. There are easier ways of doing this, and there are much more difficult ways as well. But prior to specific subjective circumstance, let us articulate exactly what is present, regardless of rich or poor, regardless of ethnicity or style of government, regardless of being handicapped or even being adept. What is an objective model for establishing a practically reasonable worldview? Perhaps first is to recognize that we are born into an independent world. Independent as much that it was already conducting its own business before your arrival. Each of us share this characteristic, thus this is an objective description. Then perhaps we can recognize that we each have unique circumstances associated with our childhood and upbringing, family, school, country, world events, friends and responsibilities. While the circumstance is subjective, the acknowledgement of it being unique is objective. So this is another component of our worldview, to acknowledge the diverse circumstances from which we have all come. Then, let us sprinkle in that which makes us even more unique than our unique situations. For there are many kids who will end up going to one particular school. There will be many teenagers who apply for the same job at the local store, just as there will be many high school graduates landing that one particular dead-end job as they try to finish college. But what about the uniqueness of you being you, or me being me? Not independent, but autonomous, with our likes and our dislikes, our interests and our goals. Again, the specifics are subjective, but the acknowledgement that we all have them is objective. So let's describe this component as this. Acknowledging people are people, where a person carries the weight of predisposed and pre-existent expectations and foresight. I think we can all attest to this. Now, I don't mean to rant excessively on that which is immediately present and known, that we are all born into an independent world, into a unique circumstance, while carrying the weight of responsibility and expectation on our shoulders. But I think it is completely necessary to take a few steps back and see this is what objectively bonds and unites each and every member of society and humanity. We cannot focus on particular subjective qualifications because there are simply too many of these subjective circumstances that not a single one of us could have done a single thing about. Hence, it is only the subjective criteria within these objective positions that determine the level of animosity or the level of tension between one another. But underneath every single subjective argument or disagreement is an objective child born into this world. In other words, one's worldview should be grounded in objective articulation rather than subjective criticism. Being different isn't new anymore. Being new isn't even really a thing anymore. We have a vast history of human interaction and development, the rise and fall of civilizations, the power and the glory of influential leaders just as much as the disgrace and atrocity of persecution and tyranny. In the moment, our subjectively rash decisions have led to unreasonable anguish. In the moment, our inability to objectively justify our foreign and domestic relationships has maintained tensions and annihilated potential peace. In the moment, I am recommending we each remember each other. Us here, them there. We are all standing on a stage of limitless possibility. How long are we going to continue dragging out these roles we play as victims and villains, instead of moving to the next act, where we can each play the part of comrade and neighbor, student and teacher, lover and loved? So, to sum it up, how should we shape our individually subjective worldviews? By constantly striving for growing, expanding, reinforcing, and reevaluating our view of the world through experience, study, interaction, and reflection, such that there is never a single person you encounter who you couldn't say, wow, that could have been me. Empathy and humility build objective worldviews, and that's a fact.